Good afternoon. This is Richard Chang with the Sativa segment, episode 35. We have a co-host today. I haven't had a co-host in a while, but we do today. And we have the wonderful Tony Gallo all the way from Houston. But before we get started, I'd like to say this episode is fueled by Ritter Spencer Chang. It's a local law firm here in Dallas, Texas, with 2 other offices in Miami and Minneapolis. It's a full-service firm targeting the middle market and lower middle market industries. If you want to find out a little bit more about the firm, look on RitterSpencerChain.com. Okay. Hey, Tony. We've never met in person, but we finally meet.
Yes. Good.
How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
And of course, Chelsea Patterson, you are my lovely co-host today.
Thank you.
I haven't had a co-host since Dalton decided to leave me for bigger and better things, but you know, we are still in touch. First of all, thank you for making the trip to Dallas. How was your trip down here?
It was good. It was very uneventful. Southwest does a good job. I call it my little cab that brought me up here.
Good. Well, just from talking to you, I can definitely hear the Northeast accent as I've gotten to know you over the last couple of hours. Tell me about where you're from and how you got down to Texas.
Well, I've been in Texas 30 years. I guess the accent never leaves, but I grew up in the New York, New Jersey area. My dad was a New York City fireman, so we had to live in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, and then got to New Jersey, where I basically says that's my hometown. My home state now is New Jersey. But been in Texas, like I said, 30 years. Started off in Houston. Then moved to Austin, where I spent most of the time. Was there for 17 years. Went up to Dallas, Fort Worth for a while, and now I'm back down in the Houston, Galveston area. So I did I call it the Triangle of Texas.
Yeah, you did. You did the Commerce Triangle of Texas. And Chelsea, you're a consultant in the cannabis industry, and you've been involved from different angles for a while now.
Right. I started out in media and then have switched more to a focus on the M&A piece. So media, events, and then right now working with a few clients on business strategy.
Well, lovely to have you as a co-host. But let's pivot back to you, Tony. So you kind of moved around. You came down to Texas. You were telling me how you used to work for a pawn shop. Yes. And that's really kind of how you got into what you're doing today.
Well, that's how I wound up in Texas. So I've been in retail security my whole life, over 25 years. Worked for Sears, worked for Macy's, Federated Department Stores, worked for a women's specialty chain store, and then moved to Texas to take a job with a company called Easy Pawn, which is based in Austin. Worked there for 17 years.
Oh, I didn't know they were based in Austin.
Yeah, they're based in Austin, Texas.
They're big.
They're big. They're in 3 countries. I think there are more now that I left. More countries. About 1,300 stores at one time they had. I think that's even higher now. Stayed with them for 17 years. Raised my family in Austin, and then left them back in 2013 and started Sapphire, Sapphire Risk, Sapphire Protection, and started working with providing the security that we did for high-risk businesses, and worked with jewelry stores and pawn shops, liquor stores, convenience stores, firearm stores. The way I explain it is anything that has a large amount of cash and a very desirable piece of merchandise. If you can sell it in the park real quick, gold, jewelry, tobacco, lottery tickets, anything of that nature, we would try and prevent it and help provide the security for them.
Now, was that your goal when was that your role within with Easy Pawn? I mean, how did you get knowledgeable in security? Because it's a very niche area.
So I went to a criminal justice degree, New Jersey City University in New Jersey, where I grew up. Started working in retail at the time there. Stayed in retail after I graduated and worked my way up from best job I ever had was a store detective in a department store. Loved that job. It's the greatest
Did you
job in the
get
world.
to wear a badge?
You got to wear a badge, and you had a radio, and you walked undercover around in the department store, caught shoplifters, and you're in your early 20s. It was
I bet
definitely.
you saw some interesting
Yeah, I was gonna
stuff.
say,
It-
what's
it-
your best
it-
story
it
from
was-
that?
Tell me a good story of a shoplifter.
Well, we caught the ambassador of Russia's wife once shoplifting,
No kidding.
Yeah.
You would think that with that kind of money.
and that lasted about 30 seconds from the time that she was shoplifting to the time the State Department came and took her away. I thought that was a very interesting. We had people who looked pregnant shoplifting, who weren't pregnant.
Okay.
Very interesting. We've had priests shoplift. We've had police officers shoplift. All kinds of interesting. And again, when you're young and you're in your early 20s, it was fun to work in a department store, and this was a large, 3 levels type of store, and then became the director of security. Then worked in a auto parts chain, much like an AutoZone or Pet Boys kind of company, which was fun. And then I worked in a woman's specialty chain, which was a company called Wet Seal. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
That they turned out to become Wet Seal after a while, and so had a good basic knowledge of retail security. When I came to Texas to work for Easy Pawn and ran their security department, and we were, like I said, in 3 countries and throughout the United States. The pawn shop industry, which was very fascinating. Financial loaning was industry, and then that got me ready for the cannabis industry.
So tell me about like some basic principles of security that like some rules of thumb of security that you or maybe other security companies really follow.
Well, when you look at retail, and I put cannabis in the retail
Yeah.
genre, whether, a dispensary, for the most part, if you remove cannabis and replaced it with jewelry, it's for the most part a jewelry store, or it could be anything of that nature, a firearms store. It's the product is not that far of a scope away from anything else. And what I find, primarily we talk about the retail, but it can also be a cultivation and grow. We do all 6 different business lines in
I
the
was just
cannabis
going to ask
industry.
you, you're not limited to just retail.
No, so our largest project was a 450,000 square foot grow facility in Nevada, and our smallest was about 1,000 square foot dispensary.
Okay.
So we can go from one end to the other end when it comes to that. I think what a lot of people who are in this industry sometimes that are new to retail, new to any kind of, fail to realize that a lot of their losses and a lot of the things that put them out of business and is because their margins aren't where they are, has to do with theft or losses that are caused by employees. If you look at the cannabis industry, which is not any different than any other retail business of Hylas, somewhere between 60 to 70% of all their losses are internal.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's caused by carelessness, whether it's caused by apathy, or whether it's caused by straight out theft. A lot of cannabis business owners don't realize that. And sometimes we get calls after the fact. My store manager just stole $100,000. How do we prevent that from happening? Or something of that nature. In cultivation, the losses internally are even much higher. The biggest loss.
Is it because of machinery or the plants?
No, it's because, take the trim room in a cultivation facility. That's where the largest amount of internal theft occurs. Where you have those trimmers. If it's a manual trimming facility, we've caught many people who've been exposed to the buds, or somebody that allows someone to grab a bag of processed. A lot of times I'll have a cultivation owner focusing on the plant in the field, whether it's a greenhouse, whether it's a building, or whether it's a field, and I'm saying, look, someone took 5 plants out of the ground. doesn't even equate to if someone took one bag of processed cannabis out of your safe or your secured facility room, because somebody had the combination to that. So, and the same thing with a retail environment where you say if somebody took shoplifting, they go, oh, well, we want to prevent people from shoplifting in our cannabis facility. And I see it, there are some locations, sweatshirts are $80. So that loss isn't high. But the employee who's allowed not to ring a transaction and keep the money, or the employee who hands out samples, as they call it, to their friends, that's really where that exposure is a lot. And we help a lot of our clients when it comes to that. Robberies and break-ins don't occur as much as people perceive it to occur. We don't install any equipment, but you'll come across a lot of security integrators, which is somebody who would put a camera or alarm system up, and they're preaching, oh, you need to make sure that no one breaks into your location, which is important, but it's really the fact that your losses don't really occur from that the majority of the time.
Yeah, it sounds like it derives from internally, from people who have direct access where they don't really have to break in.
Correct, and it's difficult because now you're talking about people and we do high risk businesses, not just the cannabis industry, but one of the stories was I got a call from someone who owned a jewelry store, and they said that they were losing jewelry. And they needed us to come in and determine who was stealing the jewelry. Yeah. Well, the problem was it was the owner, his wife, and the owner's mother. Well, that's a very difficult,
that's awkward
situation to determine to go in there because somebody's not having a good Thanksgiving dinner because they're going to have that conversation. But a lot of cannabis business owners still don't really get that, and they feel, oh, I have 100 cameras in my location, I have 150. But no one looks at the cameras. So what good is it? Or I have a camera system that's hooked up to the POS system. Well, that's great. But if you don't do anything with that information, or you don't design that security program, it's really not going to, there's no value to what you did. You just spent more money to make yourself feel better.
So let me ask you, it sounds like you had a base of clients in other industries, we'll call it more traditional industries, such as jewelry. And sometime around 2013, when you started Sapphire Risk, you also concurrently transitioned into the cannabis industry.
Correct.
How was that transition you own your own business, so it's not like you had to get permission from anybody. But what was your thought process and say, hey, I'm going from a rather mainstream industry to a highly regulated industry that arguably you're dealing with federally illegal products?
It's interesting how people wind up where they are. And I had when I started Sapphire, I had no concept of cannabis at all. I was focusing on what I knew, which, was retail, clothing, jewelry, pawn, things of that nature. And I got a phone call.
Oh yeah, you told me about this phone call.
And
you were very savvy with the internet.
I get a phone call, and it's from one of my vendors. He's a safe vendor, and he said, "Hey, we got a call from this startup company, MJ Biz, and we were looking, and they're looking for
tiny
someone,
little
events, yeah." And they said, we need someone to come speak about how to prevent cash from being stolen from a cannabis facility. And I was like, well, let me get back to you on that, because I actually knew nothing about it, and went online, back in the internet, thank God for the internet. Looked it up, high amount of cash, very desirable piece of merchandise, 2013-14 this was. They were doing an event in Boston. Next weekend, they were doing one in Chicago, and the following week in San Francisco, and they were going across the country with that. Went to the event, spoke there. There was 125 people. If anyone knows MJ Biz, they average about 30,000 now. Yeah, 15 vendors.
I would think it's even bigger than that.
Yeah, probably. Sometimes, I call it the Super Bowl of the cannabis industry.
It's definitely the largest cannabis event in the U.S. I think.
Yeah. And that's how it started. I mean, there wasn't many people that were in the industry back then in 2013, 14. I remember the guy in front of me was the founder of MedMen. The guy behind me was the founder of Green Thumb GTI, two major companies that eventually grew from where they were back then. And then one thing led to another, got more involved in cannabis. And now we're in 37 states. We're proud to say we just helped open our 200 cannabis facility with our clients.
Congrats.
Our
That's exciting.
55th in New Jersey, which was, my home state, which is, I'm very, very proud of that fact that we were able to, I call it the double nickels state for us right now. And we continue to grow. We're very active right now in a new state, Rhode Island, which is, which is now come on board. And as, you and I have spoken, Texas is catching up, I think.
Slowly but surely.
But surely.
Yeah, we'll see what, honestly, we'll see what Senate Bill 46 does, right? But I'm curious, as you transition into cannabis and you're dealing with more owners in the cannabis industry, how do they differ from other industries when you're having to have these talks with them? And when you're trying to explain because keep in mind, a lot of these businesses, they're subject to a lot of financial restrictions such as 280E. So they have to be pretty profitable.
Sure.
And so quite frankly, security is not a revenue generating feature in any business. It's a cost. But so how do you have that talk with them? And how does it differ from other industries?
It's interesting, the cannabis industry, if you look at it as a whole, and you see that in a lot of states. When I worked in the pawn industry, a lot of people were second, third, fourth generation pawn owners. Mm-hmm. When I worked in the jewelry industry, same scenario. They've been in the jewelry industry. Retail, they've been in retail. If you look at Sears, they've been around for 100-something years. Or if you look for the cannabis industry is fairly new compared to everything, very new. And still new. And a lot of the people who are in this industry, this is new to them. They've never been in this industry. They may have owned an auto dealership, or they may have been in home construction, or they may have been lawyers, or they may have been something else, but they've never been in the cannabis industry because, quite frankly, in the last X amount of years, there really wasn't a cannabis industry, and it's still a very early industry. So a lot of times my conversations are with owners who have really not a real good knowledge. Even the legacy owners, and we call legacy, I refer to people who were in cannabis before cannabis was legal,
Sure.
I guess is the best way to put it.
That's the term I usually use, is the legacy market.
Correct.
Right?
And it's very difficult, though, for someone who comes from that market to understand how to run an actual business because
historically they've never run legitimate businesses.
Yeah.
So they were, quite frankly, just selling weed and, out of living in mom's basement. I don't know.
Correct.
Wherever.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Their understanding is, how is a little bit different than how, there's a marketing to it. There's advertising to customers. There's the ability to have, promotions and events and things of that nature. There's the, how to hire the right store manager, how to train your people, how to grow. The one challenge I see, and I see it in not just cannabis, but maybe a little bit more so in cannabis, is it's not overwhelmingly hard to run a one location. But as you start to get up the chain, it becomes more and more difficult because now you can't put your arms around everything. So if you look at retail as a whole, the way the numbers run, it's if you can run one store, that's fine. But then the next one is if you can run 3 stores, then that's the plateau. Then from 3, it's 5. And then from 5, it's 15. And from 15, it's 25. And from 25, it's 50. And then it's off to the races. If you can run 50 stores, you can run 500 stores for the most part. But it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It jumps because once you're able to manage at those levels, the infrastructure is there, or the way you handle it is there. So I have a lot of clients.
Or they just go buy a portfolio of multiple stores.
Right.
So
right. But you can't run a business that owns one store the way you run 5 stores.
Yeah.
You're not going to be successful. And that's where we get involved a lot, because we get a lot of people that come to us and we offer that fractional security because their brother can't be the head of security at 5 stores. He was good at one store. Or a friend can't do that. But once you start getting to those numbers, you start to see that your business really hurts if you don't have. And then after a while, you bring in HR, you bring in an IT department, and you start building a company. When we started with cookies, they were at store 13. We were GTI, we were at store 15. These companies are well over 50 stores now.
I got a question for you, actually, that Haley and I had discussed pre-podcast. What do you feel are some of the biggest obstacles for the new cannabis business owner, from the day they open their doors to when from when they're interested in the industry to when they're ready to open their doors?
I think the biggest challenge, and that's a good question, that I get asked a lot, is because we do a lot of work from application to the opening, and then we do a lot of work after they're open. But getting them from application to opening, one of the big things that you see, because of the way the industry is designed, is it takes time. Unlike if I want to open up a bicycle store, I'm going to get capital, I'm going to buy bicycles, and I'm going to apply to the city. They're going to give me a license. I'm going to open up my bicycle store. That's not how this industry works. You have a concept, you're going to apply for a license. The application could take a period of time for the state to review it. Application could take a period of time for the state to approve it. You have to fall under all of these requirements for permits, and sometimes the permits aren't just a retail type permit or a grow facility permit. So you're in that application mode and you're trying to get to that finish line, which is the grand opening. And a lot of times, a lot of people aren't able to take it that far. They're not able to go the distance, and they're not in it for the long haul. I call it the shiny penny, or the squirrel runs by and something else comes up. And we were talking before about the other company, Sapphire, Blue Sky Ventures, which I run. A lot of those clients, which is more of the mergers and acquisition and licenses, are people who wanted to get into the industry. Too much time has passed for them. And now they want to get out and sell whatever asset they might be, whether it's a building that's not open, whether they have a lease, whether it's a license, but at this point they're ready to move on. And I think the cannabis business owner is one of the strongest retail, or one of the strongest business owners I've seen in my 30 years of doing this, because they are able to withstand that period of time that a lot of other business owners don't have to subject themselves to.
So you're saying they're more resilient. They're not expecting initial success off the bat.
Well, a lot of them do, and that's the problem. And that's where I see a lot of challenges. The ones that are successful realize that they need to get from point A to point B, and that point B is a lot longer in this industry than it is in other industries. And, you also... A lot of times I'll talk to someone who's looking to get into the industry, and they want to do so much, and they value the plan, and they want to help so much, but they need to stay focused on that they're running a business. And again, I go back, and I'll talk about my little section of the world of Pond. You don't need 100 cameras. You don't need certain bells and whistles. You just need to make sure that you have a good program in place. Same thing. It could be showcases. It could be bags. It could be promotional events or anything of that nature. And I think a lot of that comes into, properly planning how to get from the application stage to grand opening, and then from grand opening to the thing, and to to running the business. And we spoke before about Texas, perfect example.
Yeah.
We just finished an application process for clients that applied in 2023.
Yep.
They still have not
yeah.
received their licenses.
Yeah, it sounds like we both represented clients. I know I did. I represented a group that spun off of a large national MSO. And I want to say there were over 200 applicants submitted applications, right?
Yeah.
And they've issued how many?
Yeah, zero.
Right.
Zero. I mean, if you look at the 2023 stats, like you said, over 200 applied in 2023. That number came down to 148, I think initially it was. Then the state said, look, 2023, it's 2024. If you don't want to stay, we get it. We'll give you your money back. That number came down to 120. Mm-hmm. Then of the 120, from what we understand, roughly around 70 people applied, for these 12 licenses or whatever number of licenses they're going to issue out. But these are people that have been invested in this industry since 2023, still have not gotten a license, may not get another one to 2026, if they get it. Think about that. If you were going to open up a bicycle store, would you still be in the bicycle business?
I mean, that's a 3-year lag with zero ROI and zero cash flow on that investment, right?
Exactly. So, you still have to maybe own that property. Mm-hmm. You've spent money into that thing. So how many people, like you said before, the strong survive sometimes, and that's pretty impressive about this industry to see that.
Yeah. Now, I'm just curious, Chelsea, being as a consultant and having contacts, what would you think a business owner, how would you think they would respond to a proposal spending money on security and mechanisms that you would propose to, I guess, protect their facility or protect their cash flow?
Well, from where I sit, I work with a lot of cannabis curious business owners that are raising capital. So they're either pre-revenue or they're just hitting that growth peak. And so if they're looking to expand, having a security plan in place is something that puts an investor's mind at ease, whether that's a friend, family member, or it's a PE firm, whatever it is, it puts them at ease. Same with a bank, right? So it secures the loan. If they are eligible for the loan, it would depend on the nature of the business. But having something like a security plan in place, I would imagine, would make them a less risky investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's exactly. I mean, I think when you look for investors, we work with people who are looking for investments. You need a good plan. Yeah. If I'm going to give you money, I want you to have a plan in place. Security is one of those components, but what's your marketing plan? What's your growth plan? How are you going to protect the margins? And that's the other thing about this industry. Sometimes being profitable kind of falls to a second tier, and you have to be profitable. You're in the business to make money. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, not a lot of times, but sometimes companies just can't survive because they're not profitable,
right?
And and because they don't have a good plan. Again, I want to stay in what I do, but you have a store manager that steals $100,000 from you, or $200,000, or someone who robs your store, or God forbid breaks into your store at night. You take that hit. A lot of the insurance companies we work with, you don't get a lot of claims that you can file, or even people who are not happy with you and they do something that destroy your crop.
Do you work with insurance companies? Do you collaborate with insurance companies on filing those claims as a security company?
We do. We work with a lot of insurance companies nationwide who they call it the account in duress. So an account in duress would be a business that has filed numerous claims or several claims that the insurance company, now their underwriters are saying, well, do we still want to insure them? And that account is in duress. And what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll design what we call a culture of honesty program. We'll design a program either to help them reduce any exposure or give the underwriters a little bit more comfort. They may get a bit break on their premium. Now, whether that is robbery awareness training, or reviewing their physical security, their alarm system, their access control, their video because they've had a break-in, or even emergency procedures. What to do if someone had a heart attack, what to do if there was a hurricane. Every state has a unique. It could be a tornado, it could be a hurricane, it could be a blizzard, it could be whatever, earthquake. Depending on what state you're in. So we'll work with those insurance companies who will come to us and say, this account is we're not going to renew. Mm-hmm. We'll also work with a lot of the owners, unfortunately. And again, this is more of a retail mentality, not just cannabis, but it happens. We don't get the call until they've had a big problem, They want to be cheap or they don't have the money, and maybe it's not cheap, they just don't have the money.
Fiscally conservative.
They're physically conservative, and they hire an integrator that doesn't do a very good job, and they're really not focused on the security part of it.
Yeah.
Until they are.
Right? It's similar to legal services. I mean, right. There's two mindsets. You either pay up front to prevent the catastrophic event on the back end, or you don't spend anything up front and then you pay triple on the back end because of the catastrophic event. Pick your poison, right? And unfortunately, I find more business owners picking the latter of the two. But then what happens is then something hits, and they're like, "Well, why do I have to pay?" It's like, well, because you didn't pay the piper on the front end,
right?
So,
a perfect example is taking a component of the safe. So, Costco and other companies like that, Home Depot, other places, they sell what's called a gun safe. Well, it's perfect for guns. It's designed for guns. You put it in your house and your little Johnny doesn't break into your safe because it has a lock on it. But it's made of, if you ever looked inside a gun safe, it's a thin piece of metal with sheetrock, like literal sheetrock that's on the wall, and it's designed to withstand a fire. So if you had a fire and your guns were in there at your house, the sheetrock would absorb some of the heat, and it's perfect for that. But it has no place in the cannabis industry, because I can go to Home Depot and buy a diamond cutter, and I can cut through that thin piece of metal and steal what's in your safe, which could be, a large amount of cash or whatever it might be. But a lot of business owners in the cannabis industry, more on the West Coast, less on the East Coast, because the states have changed a little bit, found an easier way to do that. So they buy that, or someone might put up a Ring cameras. Well, Ring cameras are great; they're for home, they're perfect, but they're not designed for a business environment, so a lot of times, exactly what you just said. My calls come, we got broken into, we lost $1 million, $500,000. We need you to design the security for that. Well, that's the lesson that you learn. My employees have been stealing the whole time. My grower's been stealing the whole time, or someone's come in and we had an individual, a disgruntled employee that got fired, and he threw bleach into their water system. Well, if you grow and you have bleach in your water system, you really don't have a crop anymore.
Do you ever design security? This is really, I'm tangenting off to a different subject, just out of curiosity. But do you ever get calls to redesign security systems for people's homes?
We do. We get, more from other industries like the jewelry industry or whatever.
Yeah.
Where they follow someone home, a jeweler or whatever. But we do have situations where we've had employees or owners taking a large amount of cash. Someone was tipped off and they were carjacked or whatever, or they've gone to their house and they've attacked. But we do get some people who are in the industry that are worried about their home invasion, something of that nature. And I do see that in high risk businesses.
I would imagine for like pharmacies and dealing with DEA, controlled substances, because they keep a lot of some stuff in their safe as well. And the reason I know that is because I have clients in the pharmaceutical industry to where I've seen pictures of actually the the Texas State Board of Pharmacy, they have their own police, by the way, which I didn't know that. They actually will go out there and look at the safe and look at the to see how controlled substances are maintained. I wasn't sure if you do any of that as well.
Yeah, so we'll work with the we don't do a lot. We'll work with the business owner on protecting themselves at home, and there've been exposures to that can occur. We've had a lot of times where the employees have been robbed at opening or closing, which is the most vulnerable time in a retail location, is when you open your store prior to opening, and when you close your store prior to opening. And we have
that makes sense.
We have procedures that help mitigate that kind of losses from occurring, because if somebody was able to get in prior to the store opening, they could spend a lot more time than a few minutes and empty that store out. Or same thing at closing. If they get approached at closing, they could be brought back into the store, and they're not having to worry about anyone walking into the store because the store is now locked from the outside.
You'd have to be brave, though, in Texas, I think, to try to rob any of the medicinal dispensaries, right? Because one, it's a gun-carrying state, and two, all of the security guards I've seen on site are people I would never want to mess with.
Well, no, and that's true. I mean, if you look at security, the states have really, in cannabis industry, mandated a level of security that you do not see in almost any other high-risk business. So whether the cannabis business owner wants that level of security or not, the state has said, sometimes I think they think it's a radioactive material that we're selling, but they do have to provide a level of security that you don't have to provide at a jewelry store or, a pawn shop or liquor store, or convenience store. So if you look at robberies, robberies in a cannabis facility are way lower than robberies in those other businesses. Convenience stores, robberies and are astronomical. Jewelry stores, pawn shop, liquor stores, firearm stores. Well, maybe not firearms, but you see what I'm saying? So cannabis really, but a lot of business owners don't know that, and that's where that conversation we just had. Yeah. They're being told you need to prevent someone breaking into your store or robbing your store, and they're looking there because, again, that's the shiny penny, but they're not looking at really where their losses are occurring.
So I'm just curious, and we're going to start pivoting more towards your company in our discussion, but how does it differ with your clients in adult use states such as Nevada or Illinois, where you're dealing with a federally controlled substance versus like a state like Texas, where you're mostly dealing with hemp consumable goods? Do you see a difference in how you approach their security needs, or are the owners, do they address their security needs a little bit different or from a somewhat of a different perspective?
So, if you look at the hemp industry and compare it to, when I say cannabis, we're talking about the THC product.
Yeah.
Hemp isn't required by a lot of the states to have a robust security system, such as the cannabis industry,
That's
the
right.
THC industry. So we see a lot of issues in the hemp industry where they have the traditional losses that you would see in a convenience store or a gas station, compared to what we see in states that are mandating tight security. When Texas has their cannabis program, it's going to be tight. DPS is running that program, and it's going to be tight, and it's going to be mandated, maybe more so than, say, Oklahoma or something of that nature. So we see more security problems in the CBD hemp industry than we see in the cannabis industry.
I guess just
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense because just a lack of it's more. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that it's more lax in the sense that it's not mandated, and secondarily, you're potentially dealing with one, probably less volume, and secondarily just less of a regulated products compared to other adult use states or even like more robust medical states.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
So-
and again, what you just said is it's less regulated, and that hits home very hard. There's not a lot of retailers who start off proactive. They start off reactive. They become proactive over time. And then the generations, you learn to be more proactive. So if your dad was proactive, you're going to be proactive in the store that you've taken over or family of that nature. And you learn the ins and outs of that, and having a good TL rated safe compared to a gun safe, or having adequate camera coverage, but utilizing that coverage, or access control devices that, that really are meant for access control devices. And, I see that all the time where a lot of those problems occur simply because you're trying to learn the industry.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit to your companies, and because I want to be sensitive on time as well. You mentioned that you have really two companies, one being Sapphire Risk, which you described it to me in really three phases. Phase one being the content writing and the application, and then transitions into really the build out of security systems for us for a business, and the third leg being more of a ongoing, from what it sounds like, more of an ongoing monitoring, fractional security. Yeah. So it comes in layers. And that it sounds like phase three is more of a long-term play, more of a long-term relationship. But then separately, you also have Sapphire Blue Sky Ventures, which is more of a, from what I can tell, more of a mergers and acquisitions transactional advisory company. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Sapphire Blue Sky Ventures really came about from what Sapphire Risk started. And, and that was, we started working with clients, 37 states. We worked with about 800 clients. We mentioned the application. Leo heads up the content writing application. Haley does the physical security. Jeff does the day-to-day security, the fractional security with that. But now you've opened up your dispensary or your grow, and you're doing well, or hopefully you're doing well. Right. And you say, "Hey, I want to open up another dispensary." Well, we worked with you. We worked with you from application to operations. So you're going to start leaning on some of the people that you know. Do you know anybody who can help me find another location, or I want to buy a license? And same thing. We help people with things that aren't security related, POS companies and showcase companies and lighting companies and water and soil. So after a while, we started saying, hey, we can help these people grow their company. Or you've been in the industry for a while, you've developed a great company, and it's time for you now to retire or move on, or it's just not something you want to do. We can help you sell. So we work nationwide. We help you buy and sell cannabis licenses. Very active right now. It depends on what state, but New York's active for us. Minnesota's active for us. We can also help you buy and sell dispensaries or grow facilities. And then we also can help people who are looking for investment money. They'll put together a portfolio, they'll put together a pitch deck and why they want to raise money, and we'll work with them on that part of it to understand how they can grow. So our desire is to be with a client from the time that they sat in a bar and decided they wanted to be in the cannabis industry to
how often that
10
happens.
years later. And that happens a lot. Yeah. It's the most amazing thing. But really, from the time that they're in enter into the industry, we don't want to be, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there are certain parts of work where you work as far as you can, and then, a general contractor, does a great job, builds it out, but at that part he's done after the build out, you may never see him again, or if there's any legal work, that specific legal work, you may never see him. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to be with you from the beginning to the end. And if the end is that you want to grow, or the end is you want to sell, we're going to be there for you. We call ourselves business connectors.
That's right. And then once they sell and they have a liquidity event and they want to take that liquidity event to do something else in the cannabis industry, I see how this is playing out.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, Tony, tell us, what are some of your 2025 and leading into 2026 goals? What's the growth strategy for Sapphire, and where do people find you usually?
Well, you can find us on our website is sapphirerisk.com. And I think we have a pretty good, robust social media. I'm proud of our, I think we have like 30,000 on LinkedIn. Pretty proud of that, and all the other social media on that. But I think where our growth is we're here for the long run. We've been here for 12 years. We plan to be here for another 12 years. We're not a fly by night. We're not a quick in and out kind of company. And you see that. And there are, and again, there might be a company that comes in and, they're strong in what they do, but just not their makeup, they move on.
Right.
But we want people, and we want clients that are here that want us to help them grow, want to help them succeed. We're very active in Rhode Island, as I just said, is our new state. They're going to award 24 licenses. We want to be with those clients, but we want to stay with those clients as they grow and as they become either, a large, company nationwide, an MSO, multi-store operators, or if it's time for them to move on and they've achieved their goal and they have a good presentation for someone to say, you know what, I want to buy you. Right. We get that happening a lot where, we'll have a company, a dispensary who wants to sell and someone's looking to buy and they're looking to come in. We don't want to just sell it to that person. We want to stay with them for a while.
Well, it sounds like you're going to continue down the current strategy, but just on a bigger scale from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So,
and as you both know, cannabis is a relationship business.
It really is.
You guys are both puppeteers behind the scenes, whether people realize it or not. I see the big picture
almost
there.
Somewhat incestuous, right? So
it is amazing how many people you know and how many people continue to know.
Well, we were just talking at the beginning, just right off the bat. I knew two people within Sapphire.
Yeah,
and it was just because I've been in the industry for 12 years now. So
I always tell Leo in my office, I said, nobody ever leaves. No one ever leaves this industry. They may be gone. 5 years later, they pop their heads up again. And you're like, where have you been for 5 years? But
right.
No one ever leaves the industry.
Well, Chelsea, did you have any other questions for Leo? I mean, I'm sorry, not Leo, but it's for Tony. I'm thinking of Leo now because you keep on saying Leo.
But you work with Leo, so you know him.
Yeah.
No, I think this was really helpful. I think anybody that's looking to learn more from you can probably find you on any stage at any event in the U.S.
Yeah.
I recruited you in 2022 for an event, so
he did.
Goes back a long way. There's some great resources. Tony's a great thought leader on security, so it was a great idea.
Well, thank you for making the time, Tony.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, thank you.